Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. We talk about spirituality, religion, culture, different kind of theories, mindsets. One thing about Adventism is that I wanted to talk about the Adventist Quarterly. So those are lessons it's a quarterly, so it's every third month there's a new quarterly lesson book that you get that's divided into months, weeks, days. It goes Sabbath to Sabbath. So usually there's a lesson that's going to be traditional, the really traditional Sabbath schools or traditional churches, because not every church that's traditional uses the quarterly at all. Usually you can get them free hard copy from the church itself. Usually, especially when they're new. And not every church uses them like routinely. Usually you kind of have it at home, maybe for your own devotionals. So some churches that are more conservative will use them even in the service. And so they'll have Bible studies throughout the week where they'll study a certain lesson based on the day of the week that it is for that, what you're studying for that day. And then there's oh my gosh, I'm yawning. I'm tired, guys. Sometimes there are churches that might not be conservative, but some of those non-conservative churches might have different types of Sabbath school classes, where some might be more traditional Sabbath school classes, some might be more like free flowing, some might be age ranges, some might be by language, or some might be by marital status. They have different categories of classes you do before church. And so the quarterly is something that it really depends what type of, it just kind of depends. I've had Sabbath school teachers that use the quarterly all the time, back when I used to have the cornerstone. I think that was primary age, so that's before high school. I think we used cornerstone, and my dad was teaching Sabbath school with a couple of his friends, and we used to use the quarterly every week because it was LA, and we would drive to church, and from a bit of it would take a while to get there. I would always read the lesson on the way to church at the least, so I always knew what the lesson was. And I used to bring it to church with me. I used to bring the Bible to church with me. I used to come with the Bible and the quarterly all the time. So I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about it, because it is kind of a part of the Adventist tradition that it might differentiate from some other churches. Now, the quarterly is kind of more of a casual thing. People don't believe in it over the Bible. It's kind of like lessons that are arranged in a certain way, but they do kind of go by the beliefs of the Adventist church. So I'm just gonna go through the lesson that's for today. I'm not here to preach about anything or say do or don't read it or whatever. I haven't even really looked at this. I've only seen a couple words popping out about resurrection. I haven't even really read it. But they have these free online. You can just look up Seventh-day Adventist Quarterly, and you can get a PDF version. For me tonight, the PDF version loads, and the website link was not loading. And the website is A as in Apple, B as in Bobby, S as in Sam, G as in Grace, .adventist.org, and that's where you can find the texts and things. It's all free. And again, if you go to an Adventist church, you can get them for free. The hard copies. You could probably even order it online. I don't know. I've never tried. But they're kind of good to have handy, and they change every few months. As far as I know, I haven't seen like a repetitive one, but I don't really have like any kind of learning schedule where I've ever like kept up with one of them for like that long, where I've seen like a repetition. But it's usually topics, it's usually not like earth-shattering, groundbreaking, like, new information. And usually it does go by like the church perspective. So it's like usually it has Bible passages in there, and then it usually has the kind of explanation from an Adventist teaching perspective. So today's August 16th of 2022, Tuesday. So that would be page 67 of the Adult Quarterly, and we're in the third quarter, and I'm just going to read through what it says so you can get like an idea of kind of what it looks like, what the topics look like, kind of what it is. So the title of it is The Power of the Resurrection. It says the resurrection addresses the problem of human powerlessness. When we think about life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we often think about how the death of Jesus was the event that made us legally right with God. And that, of course, is true. However, the resurrection adds a specific dimension to salvation. The resurrection of Jesus is meaningful not just because it shows us that one day we will be resurrected as well. The resurrection placed Jesus at the right hand of the Father in a position of power and authority. This resurrection power is the same power that God makes available for us today. Now, those are two paragraphs. It's not necessarily direct from the Bible, no quotes from the Bible. This is all just like traditional thought. These are kind of ideas that you would usually be taught since you were pretty young. If you're thinking about the resurrection, you're thinking about life, you're thinking about death, you're thinking about, Jesus, these are things that would usually come up with one another in topics in the Adventist faith. The next section says, in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 18 through 23, Paul talks about the power of God. What does this text teach us about the power of the resurrection? What hope and promises for yourself can you find in these verses? And it gives you like 3 lines you can write on there. And then it doesn't actually write out the verse in this, so that's interesting. And then there's 3 more small paragraphs, and then one other section where you can write. So it says, Paul is praying that the Ephesians understand a few things that can be understood properly only with divine help. 1, that there's the hope of transformation and an eternal future to which Jesus has called us. And 2, that we understand the power that was manifested in our behalf. The next paragraph, Paul then tries to describe how astonishing this power is. The power that is available to us today is the same power that resurrected Jesus, not just out of the ground and back to life, but to the place of power at the Father's right hand. And the third paragraph here, but Paul doesn't stop there. The resurrection didn't simply give Jesus just any sort of power. It gave him the power to rule and provide every possible thing his people could ever need for all eternity. And then the last section says, make a list of areas in your life where you need the power of the resurrected Jesus. When you have finished, pray that this power will be applied to all these areas of need. At the same time, what can you do better? What choices can you make that can allow this power to work more freely in your life? And then there's 3 lines where you can write. And that whole last question section is kind of highlighted in a different color. It's like what color is this? It's like peach or pink or something. It's kind of like a peach color, like a tan, like peach. I don't know. Looks like peach color to me. It's kind of highlighted, so it's kind of like you have lessons like this every day you can do. The one before that is like, in the name of Jesus. That was for Monday. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. That's the translation of John 14:14 from the New King James Version. The Sunday lesson was Our Father's Extravagance, talking about Romans 8, verses 28 to 39. And then it had the Sabbath afternoon, which was my birthday, August 13th of 2022. And it says that whole lesson is called Seeing the Invisible. It says, it gives you all the passages for the week's study as well as memory texts. And yeah, it just is divided up by days, and it has the Sabbath lessons, and it has the Friday lesson. So the Sabbath lesson is the one that it starts on every week. So that's the Saturday. Usually Saturday after church, that's when the next lesson starts. I'm just thinking about this out loud right now because I never really thought about that before. But yeah, it doesn't start on Sunday morning. It starts Saturday. Once you finish church, you're now on a new lesson. And so that's the Saturday lesson. While it's still Sabbath time, you're on that first lesson now. And then it goes all the way till the next Friday. And the Friday has a discussion. So this one ends Friday, August 19th, 2022. And it says further study. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says just the sections. It says further study. Read Ellen G. White in the Days of Queen Esther, and pages 598 through 606 in Prophets and Kings. So those are writings by Ellen G. White that you can read on that Friday. And it has discussion questions, 4 discussion questions. One is about talk about the kinds of things we believe in and what we do not see, things that we know are real, yet are beyond our sight. Like that's kind of it goes further into that, but that's generally the first topic. Second topic, discuss the final question found at the end of Wednesday's study. The next third question is if faith grows strong by coming in conflict with doubts and opposing influences, and this leads to something extremely valuable, like it's basically like how should this shape the way we look at such conflicts. And then 4, most of us have seen people, even Christians, in situations in which, at least from our perspective, the outcome was horrible. And it kind of talks about, that kind of situation where outcomes aren't as ideal. And then the last part, it has what's called Inside Story. This says Part 8, Married to Christ, by Andrew McChesney. And it's a whole story. It's a whole story, basically, about passages, like part of a passage where it says, I don't even know, like I'm trying to like breeze through this, and I don't really see, I don't understand, like it talked about a communion Sabbath. Mind you, a lot of Adventist churches don't have communion every single Saturday. A lot of them will do it once a quarter, which is every time, basically when you're renewing a new quarterly, you basically do want a communion. It's not necessarily considered negative to do it more often, but just traditionally, they do it every quarter, and a quarter is 13 weeks long technically. And so so that's kind of what the quarterly looks like. But I know a lot of people kind of get a little bit curious about Adventism, and like, the more you talk to people who were raised Adventist, you kind of know they kind of like, when they start talking about the Bible, it's like, very it can be different from a lot of different religions, because a lot of Adventists are really taught from this perspective, of like reading and studying regularly. Like when you think of it, it's like the church provides you like free material that you're just gonna read it every day, or at least every week. And like I mentioned, like think about, if you go after church, you come home, there's a study that you do. These are kind of private studies, like, or they can be with family or friends or whatever. And then you can see all the way down by like Friday how it like implies that there's like discussion questions, kind of like implying that you're going to be interacting in some form. So a lot of people have Vespers during Sabbath, either to bring Sabbath in or to close Sabbath out, or like just during the Sabbath period time every week. And so there's a lot of like interacting around like scriptures and like talking about the lessons or the church service, or whatever is on people's minds. And people can study outside of this. Like a lot of people study outside of this. They read other kind of devotional books. It's a very kind of like studious kind of culture when it comes to religious texts. But again, it is very like toward what the Adventist church thinks. And I always kind of I would always go through periods where I was like, like I'll see what the lesson's about, and if I liked the lesson, I would kind of read it, and if I didn't, I would kind of just like not read it. And I used to read, like, this isn't like a bragging thing, but like I used to read like probably on my own like a chapter a day of the Bible. And if I didn't read a chapter, I would read from one heading to the next. If I didn't feel like even doing that, I would read one paragraph. And I did that like pretty much every day. And I was never taught to like have to do it. I just did it. I just picked it up and that's what I would do, on my own. Like I love doing it. And I mean, when you think about, anything you put your mind and effort into, you're gonna get kind of like informed on it, or you're gonna learn about it. And that's kind of one method that, a lot of Adventists have with learning the Bible, is like you're very immersed in it almost every single day of your life, if not just on weekends. I mean, if you give somebody a Saturday and a Sunday every week where you're just kind of talking about the Bible, I mean, you're still going to learn a whole lot. And then if you have stuff to take home where you're kind of challenging your thoughts about it, I would always read these kind of things and be like, what the heck does this mean? I would read like the explanations, like I was saying, a couple paragraphs, 3 more paragraphs over here. Like I would read like the paragraphs and I would be like, what? Like, do I really believe that? And I would break it down like sentence by sentence by sentence. Like say for example, the first sentence that's like, the resurrection addresses the problem of human powerlessness. I would be like, does it really? Like, does the resurrection really address the problem of human powerlessness? And what is human powerlessness? Are humans powerless? And what kind of what does resurrection have to do with powerlessness, or humans in general. I would just kind of break down sentences and just kind of think about it. And yeah, that's kind of one aspect of like Adventist education that I feel, as far as I've learned, it seems very different from a lot of different denominations of Christianity. Like, it's very organized as far as like learning and giving you opportunities and materials to learn, but it is very traditional based. You don't really see things that challenge the traditions and beliefs too much. Like, you might hear it in churches or in Sabbath schools or at Vespers. There might be some little bit of challenging stuff, but usually the majority of the literature that's either already written by Ellen G. White or literature that's already written by any of the White family, or I guess James White technically, and then anything that's written, like, that's given out in the church, usually it's like through the lens of like the Adventist faith. But I kind of like things that kind of like give you like a prompt. I've always kind of liked that. I've always been in the writing prompts, reading prompts, like prompts where you can just like challenge your ideas. I really like that kind of stuff. I like it when like people bring up topics where I'm like, ooh, this is a good topic. Like, almost anything is a good topic, like I like to just kind of just be in conversation with people about like, okay, where do we believe the same or different on this? And like, I do nothing with it. It's like, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not really gonna care. Like, I have friends that even believe like racially, different, types of things, where I would be like, whoa, I don't believe that about that race at all, and, we can still be friends at the end of the day. There's like nothing, there's nothing that's really gonna like make me not be engaged with a person, unless either they don't want to be, or unless it's just not a healthy environment. And even the ones that aren't healthy, clearly you guys see I still kind of hang around the unhealthy situations sometimes. I'm not always so quick to just like let it go. I will give things a chance, and maybe beyond what is even necessary, just to make sure that I fully gave it a chance. I mean, I have my limits too. If somebody's really just like popping off all the time and really like violent, I'm not gonna like stick around. But it's like, that's kind of my limit. Other than that, I'm usually, at least gonna try to be friends, try to be, kind and nice to people, and open-minded towards people's differences, especially when they want to just interact, and I can tell, like, this person doesn't really have any friends, or like they don't make friends easily, and like, I can still like hang out with them. And then when they start getting on my nerves, I'll just like go home. I'll just be like, well, bye, like, you're being annoying. But yeah, I've never really had too much of an issue with that, but I do have my limits. I'm not gonna just like spend all my quality time with like somebody who just is maybe doing things like that. But yeah, that's kind of all I really had to say. That was kind of lengthy of an explanation, but I started thinking about the quarterlies, and I think I've touched on it before a little bit when I talked about devotionals, but I never like read from one or anything. That's kind of what they generally sound like, the adult one anyways. You have Cradle Roll. They used to have Insight. They used to have Guide. And then I mentioned like Cornerstone. I don't remember if those are all of them, but those are like all the age ranges of types of like weekly lessons, daily lessons, Sabbath lessons that you would get. Like, every age group has an option of something they can read every day of the week, pretty much. If you don't read the Bible, or if you don't open a Bible, there's still that, there's still like pamphlets and things and books that are already written that you can read. Like I I probably shouldn't say this, but I always kind of toyed with the idea of making like my own quarterly, just because I love to write so much. And I was like, I could totally make a quarterly, but I don't think it would be like, I'm pretty sure the church would not approve. I'm not like trying to like piss people off. It's just, I like to challenge things. I like to think things more deeply. I'm not even saying that I don't believe in like Adventist traditions. Like I've said it before, like they keep me grounded when I go back to them. Like it's always kind of like a base that I will probably always find myself returning to, just to balance out my life. But do I do that stuff every day? No. Do I always believe in it? No. Do I always feel like the need to do it or want to do it? No. Do I challenge the ideas surrounding a lot of it? Yes. I don't really care. That's just kind of how I choose to live my life. I don't see anything wrong with it. I kind of just do my own thing. But yeah, I'm not too concerned. I find it interesting. There's like this indoctrination that, you kind of get into a rhythm. If you study this kind of stuff, you kind of get into a rhythm of like studying it. And the more you study it, the more you kind of get into like a rhythm of just like every day you're just like, okay, it's part of my routine, and you just do it. And whether it's first thing in the morning or at night or lunch break or whatever, and it's just like people don't really, it's not even something that the church is going to be like, oh yeah, you need to read the quarterly every day. Like nobody says that. They do talk about devotionals and stuff like that, but you're not really always taught too much about like that kind of stuff. I just think a lot of people pick up on it and do it because it's part of a traditional thing that people just they do. But and when you're around people who are doing it, it's kind of easier to do because then you can like discuss it with people. It's not like you're just like by yourself reading and then you have like no one to talk to. So it's kind of more of like a communal type of thing a little bit. So but that's kind of all I really had to say about that. I just wanted to give some information about that because it's something a little different. It's kind of cool for people who like that kind of stuff. It's interesting. It shows verses of the Bible, but they're kind of like hand-picked verses that have to do with the section that they're talking about, like, and it's usually small snippets of passages, like small sections or like a chapter or like half a chapter or something. It's not like, read, Genesis through Numbers, it's like you're not reading like a whole full-on thing, but you're not reading like 3-4 books at a time of the Bible, but per week, but you're kind of paced, and it's not really organized in like a linear way. It's organized more by topic. And I don't know, I feel like, in my opinion, the Insight, I don't think they even exist anymore. I think they're out of print, but for me, the Insight was always the most interesting one. I remember I used to love the Insight. It had cool stories. It was kind of made like a little magazine. It was like the size of a magazine, just a lot thinner. So you kind of felt like you kind of had like a free little magazine, and it was like, it always had like pictures of like, I used to like the mission story. It used to have like a story about some kid from some other culture and like what their life was like, and how they became Adventist, or how their life changed when they started like doing different things that the Adventist church would teach, and like all these kind of stories about like these kids. Like it would be every week, it would be like, oh, this kid from like Costa Rica was born in this like tradition where they were like I don't know, like they'd be like they they experienced like nightmares every night because of some ritual that their culture did. And then, a missionary came and gave them a book, and they started reading about Jesus and started reading more about Jesus, and the nightmares went away. Like, it would be stuff like that. It was kind of like a little bit profound. At least in my teen years, I found it to be pretty like interesting, and it would have stuff like that in there that I was like, oh, this is cool. It was a little tiny prejudice against other cultures, just kind of like making it seem that Adventist culture was the best way, and everything else, Adventism fixed every other problem that people had. But I'm not gonna say that it doesn't fix things. As far as like the lifestyle itself, like the healthy lifestyle, and just kind of the balanced living, and kind of like the calmer kind of like activities. It's definitely like, just on the surface, even if you're not religious, just the acts alone of like the choices you would make every day, if you just followed them without the spiritual belief or the practice from a religious perspective, and you just like took the beliefs and just did the actions, I think it does bring a lot of benefit. It doesn't have to be even from a religious perspective. I just think it just brings a lot of balance. But I do think it is also a little bit extreme, because there's not a lot of like giving in to like any kind of natural inclination. You're kind of just like, it's like another extreme. It's like you could live your life and party your days away, and just not have any care in the world or any kind of routine or anything. Or you can be like in such a strict regimented routine that you're like not really fully doing things in a way that is flexible. It's a very rigid. It can be very rigid. If you're following like every single thing, it does get to like a rigidity in life. Not that that's not good or that it's not like fun, but I feel like in my own personal life, I do need to go back and forth. I need to be like rigid and like balanced sometimes in my life, and then other times I need to be just like flow with the wind, take some days off and just like drink whatever, smoke whatever, do whatever, like I need to have like a back and forth between things. Otherwise, either thing tends to be too rigid, honestly. Like if I don't have any kind of spiritual thing in my life, and I'm just avoiding any spiritual things, and I'm just kind of like roaming around, it's kind of hard for me to kind of like feel like there's a lot of purpose to stuff. Like, not like in a depression way, but it's kind of more like I'd find a lot less value in things when I'm not coming at them from like a perspective of like spirituality or like the universe, or something deeper than myself, than my ego self, for the most part. And I meant for this to be really short, so I don't want to like make this like super lengthy, but all right, with that, I'm gonna sign off of here. So thanks for listening.